60 to courtroom defeats, 30 for felony charges, $787 million in penalties. Yet Donald Trump's boldest threat came live on Capitol Hill, declaring he would fire Jasmine Crockett. But instead of breaking her, the nation watched him break. 41 seconds of humiliating silence as 10,000 protesters outside roared resign. And 330 million Americans saw his power collapse in real time. If Trump can't silence Jasmine, how could he ever silence you? Stay with us. This is a story worth every second of your time. The first thing America sees is chaos wrapped in order. Red breaking news banners flooding every network, ticker lines spinning like roulette wheels, and anchors talking over each other with the urgency of a nation about to tip. The chyron slams. Across the bottom of the screen, in bold white, Trump threatens to fire Jasmine Crockett. Live hearing at Capitol. Phones vibrate in kitchens, offices, factory floors. Nobody blinks. Everyone knows this is not another headline. It is a collision course. Trump's voice, replayed in a relentless loop, snarls through speakers from New York to Nevada. I fired Coke, and Crockett is next. Mark my words, each repetition is heavier than the last, dropping like steel onto the public psyche. Economists warn of shockwaves, lawyers scramble with injunctions, and talk radio callers scream about democracy being put on the auction block. Markets flicker, fragile as glass, and across the ocean, world leaders issue cautious statements that sound more like prayers than policies. At the Capitol, barricades sweat under the crush of protesters. Handmade signs scrawl fury in black paint. Hands off our vote. Truth can't be fired. The chants are not polite, they are primal, guttural, waves of rage beating against the marble facade. Police helmets glint beneath a punishing sun, and sirens call in the distance, waiting for the spark that will turn chance into fire. A woman in the front holds up a photo of her son in military uniform and yells toward the cameras, "My beau fights for freedom abroad. Who's fighting for it here?" Inside the corridors, the air is cooler but thicker. Jasmine Crockett steps out of a narrow hallway, back straight, eyes sharp, the weight of expectation pressed onto her shoulders like stone armor. She doesn't carry fear, she carries stories, letters from workers crushed by inflation, calls from single mothers begging her not to let democracy be sold off to the highest bidder. Her hand brushes the worn spine of a constitution tucked inside her binder, not as a prop, but as a shield. A camera flash ignites her silhouette against the dark wood, and for an instant she looks less like a lawmaker and more like a general stepping into battle. In the hearing chamber, chairs scrape, microphones hiss, and the gallery hums with restless energy. Reporters sharpen their pens, aides whisper calculations of how many millions are glued to their screens. A young intern whispers to another, "If she falters today, it's over," and their words vanish into the roar of silence that always comes right before the storm. The gavel hasn't fallen yet, but every heartbeat feels like thunder, every breath like borrowed time. Then, from the back, heavy doors swing open. Trump strides in, red tie cutting through the room like a wound, chin lifted with the arrogance of a man convinced he can bend institutions by sheer will. His glare locks on Jasmine, the crowd shifts, the tension hardens, and history itself seems to lean closer to listen. And in that unbearable pause before the first word is spoken, Jasmine leans toward her microphone, eyes never leaving her adversary. Her voice slices the silence, deliberate, steady, inescapable. Would you trust one man with the power to fire? To truth itself, the question does not hang, it detonates, and the chamber becomes the stage for America's reckoning. The chamber doors slam open, and in floods a shockwave of flashbulbs and shouts. Donald Trump storms down the aisle like a general marching into a conquered city, his smirk stretched into something between arrogance and defiance. The cameras don't have to chase him, he commands them, pulling every lens into his orbit. His red tie cuts a line of aggression through the chamber, his footsteps echoing off marble walls like warning shots. A hush spreads, sharp and suffocating. Eyes turn. The man who tried to fire a Fed governor now comes with a new target in his sights. He stops short of the witness table, raises a finger, and growls through clenched teeth. Next to go is Jasmine Crockett. The words ripple outward like a detonation. Gasps break loose across the room, audible, uncontainable. Reporters jerk their pens, aides clutch their notes, and somewhere in the gallery a voice blurts, "Did he just say that?" The gavel cracks down once, but it's no use, order has already fled. Trump lets the silence linger as though feeding on it, daring anyone to challenge the claim. His eyes search the chamber not for allies, but for submission. But where the air shakes with panic, Jasmine sits unmoved. She lifts her chin slowly, her expression carved in steel, a calm so deliberate it feels like defiance. She doesn't flinch, doesn't blink, doesn't give him the satisfaction of fear. Instead, she leans back, folding her hands in front of her, as though daring Trump to come closer. To contrast his electric, his bluster against her composure, his storm against her silence. Every camera finds the split screen, the duel framed in real time. Inside that moment, the country holds its breath. Some whisper that she is cornered, others that she is baiting him into the trap he cannot see. Trump tilts his head, as if baffled by her lack of panic, and repeats his threat with more venom. "You're finished, Crockett." Just like Coke, the chamber jolts again, but Jasmine's eyes flash with the sharpness of someone who knows fear is a currency she refuses to pay. The tension crackles like live wire. Security stiffens, hands twitching near earpieces. Protesters outside pound against barricades, their chants bleeding faintly through the heavy wood doors. Reporters exchange frantic glances, aware that history is drafting its script faster than they can write it. Aides shuffle papers they no longer dare to read. The gavel cracks again, desperate for control. But control has changed hands. The room belongs to the standoff between two wills. Jasmine finally shifts forward, her voice low, steady, but cutting through the chaos like glass. "Mr. Trump, you can point at me, you can shout at me, but you cannot silence the people who sent me here." The audience freezes, stunned by the calm precision. Cameras zoom so tight you can see the flicker of rage on Trump's lips, and in that heartbeat, the roles invert. The man who came to intimidate now looks unsettled, while the woman he vowed to erase radiates unshakable presence. The crowd doesn't know whether to gasp again or to cheer, but they do know one thing with absolute certainty: this confrontation will not end quietly. Trump leans forward, his shadow swallowing the microphone, his voice curling into a growl that drips with contempt. "You're nothing but a disposable pawn." The insult slices through the chamber like a blade, cruel and deliberate, aimed not only at Jasmine, but at the millions watching who believe their voices matter. A collective gasp rips from the gallery, aides stiffen, and even the gavel's crack sounds timid against the venom in his tone. The room feels smaller, the air heavier, as though history itself recoils at the audacity. But Jasmine doesn't blink. She straightens, shoulders squared, eyes steady, a calm so defiant it radiates louder than any shout. Her voice lands like a hammer on granite. "You can fire people, Mr. Trump, but you can't fire the Constitution." The words cut through the silence with surgical precision, not screamed but spoken with the weight of a verdict. For a heartbeat, the chamber is frozen, suspended between disbelief and revelation. Before the reaction detonates, the crowd erupts, shockwaves of cheers and gasps colliding. Journalists scramble to send alerts, their fingers rattling across keyboards. Hashtags ignite in real time. Hashtag Crockett vs. Trump. Hashtag Fire the Truth. Hashtag Constitution Strikes Back. Twitter floods with clips, millions of retweets spreading her words across every device in America. Before the echoes had even faded in the chamber, commentators on rival networks are forced into silence, watching as the narrative slips from Trump's script into hers. Trump's face flushes crimson, his lips curling into the snarl of a man unaccustomed to being challenged so cleanly, so publicly. He slams his palm onto the table, but the sound is drowned by the roar outside. Protesters pounding barricades, chanting louder as Jasmine's words replay through portable speakers. His power feels suddenly fragile, like a throne built on sand. Shaken by one unflinching sentence, Jasmine leans back, her expression unshaken, her silence after the strike as powerful as the words themselves. She doesn't gloat, doesn't smirk. She simply waits, forcing Trump to sit in the shadow of his own fury. The cameras catch the tremor at the edge of his jaw, the twitch of frustration that betrays weakness. Around him, his allies shuffle uneasily, glancing at one another as though realizing the balance has shifted. The chamber is no longer his stage, it has become hers. And as millions across the nation lean closer to their screens, hearts racing, one question begins to ripple through every living room, newsroom, and protest line. What happens when power collides with principle in front of 330 million Americans and the principle does not break? The chamber, already trembling from Jasmine's strike, explodes into partisan chaos. Jin Jordan lunges forward, fingers stabbing the air like a weapon. His voice tears through the uproar. This is a circus. President Trump has every right to remove people who are undermining the will of the American people. He slams his notes onto the desk, veins in his neck straining, his tone designed not to persuade but to dominate. Elise Stefanik follows, her words sharpened with accusation. Representative Crockett is staging a show trial to humiliate a former president. This is political theater, nothing more. Their voices merge into a furious chorus, the gallery split between jeers and applause, the tension in the air thick enough to cut, but on the opposite side, the response rises just as fast, just as sharp. Hakeem Jeffries leans forward, calm but with an edge of steel. The Constitution does not grant any president the power to bend independent institutions for personal gain. If this hearing is a circus, it is because the clown brought the tent. Gasps ripple at the jet, some stifled laughs breaking through before the gavel hammers for order. Jamie Raskin then pushes his glasses higher, his tone measured but lethal. The precedent is clear. Governors of the Federal Reserve can only be removed for cause, not convenience, not political whim. If we allow this, then no safeguard remains between liberty and tyranny. His words slice like a scalpel, laying bare the stakes. The clash escalates into a battlefield of loyalty versus law. Republicans pound the table, their fists demanding allegiance to Trump's defiance. Democrats counter with statutes, precedents, the very weight of constitutional history. Each argument is no longer just words, they are blows in a duel where victory means control of America's future. Reporters scribble frantically, cameras dart from one speaker to the next, the noise of voices colliding filling every crevice of the chamber. The crowd outside roars louder, their chants echoing through the stone walls as if to join the debate themselves. Jasmine sits in silence for a moment, her eyes scanning the chamber like a general reading the battlefield. She sees the desperation in Jordan's rage, the sharp edges in Stefanik's defense, the conviction in Jeffries' calm, the resolve in Raskin's logic. The room has turned into a theater of extremes, every word amplified, every silence loaded, every gesture carrying the weight of history. The country is not just watching, it is choosing sides with every second that passes, and in the middle of it all, one truth becomes undeniable. This is no longer a debate about a hearing, or even about one woman being fired. It is a collision of two Americas, one loyal to a man, the other loyal to the law. The air vibrates with anger, suspense, and a single haunting question that grips the audience both inside and out. When loyalty dares to strangle the law, which will survive the power of one man, or the principle of a nation? The gavel strikes again, the echoes barely taming the chamber's fury, when Jasmine rises from her seat. She doesn't shout, she doesn't need to. Her voice carries with the gravity of someone holding history in her hands. Let's talk about why the Federal Reserve exists, she begins, and suddenly the nose softens, the nation leaning in. Her words are not for the politicians flanking Trump, not for the cameras circling like vultures, they are for the millions of Americans watching at home, their mortgages climbing, their paychecks shrinking, their fears mounting. The Federal Reserve was designed to be independent, she says, her eyes locking on Trump's, so that no president, no matter how powerful, could manipulate your money for his own survival. The words land with precision, slicing through the haze of partisan shouts. She holds up a chart, not with flashy graphics, but with the raw lines of economic pain. Inflation spikes of the 1970s. This is what happens when politics infects monetary policy, she continues. Gas prices through the roof, groceries doubled. Families shattered by costs they couldn't pay. It wasn't abstract, it was food on the table, it was homes lost, it was futures destroyed. The camera zooms in on the chart, the jagged mountain of inflation rising like a scar. Jasmine dries the knife deeper. Paul Volcker, he wasn't popular, not by a long shot. He raised interest rates so high that people cursed his name. Unemployment soared, businesses shuttered. But he did it to break the fever of inflation, to save the long-term health of this country. That was leadership, not convenience. That was sacrifice, not politics. The chamber falls into an easy silence, even Trump shifting in his chair, caught between bluster and the shadow of history. Jasmine turns back to the audience, her voice tightening with urgency. Now imagine what happens if the Fed becomes a weapon in one man's hand. Imagine if interest rates rise or fall, not because of economic need, but because a politician wants to juice an election. Imagine your mortgage being used as a campaign Prop, your savings account being gambled to score headlines. That is not democracy, that is dictatorship. Wearing a suit and tie, gasps ripple through the gallery, reporters scribble furiously, and outside the chants grow louder. As if the crowd feels the stakes pressing against their own wallets, she doesn't stop there. We've lived through it before. The pain of the 70s, the brutal cure of the 80s. We swore we would never let politics choke the independence of our central bank again. And yet here we are, with a man who thinks he can fire his way through the Constitution. She stares down Trump as she delivers the blow. Mr. Trump, you can't fire inflation. You can't fire the markets. And you sure as hell can't fire the truth. The words reverberate like thunder, leaving a silence more powerful than applause. Millions watching at home feel the weight, not as distant history, but as a warning beating at their own front doors. And the question that claws at every mind is stark and unshakable. If one man can cease to fend for himself, what part of your future will be left standing tomorrow? Trump can't hold back any longer. He slams his palm on the table, rattling the microphones, his voice thundering through the chamber. Fake economics. I'm the commander-in-chief of money. The words land like a grenade, shocking in their arrogance, bending the very air with their audacity. Gasps ripple through the gallery, reporters twit their heads up, and the crowd outside surges louder, their chants bleeding faintly into the marble chamber. The gavel bangs desperately for order, but order is already gone. Chaos has taken the floor. Jasmine doesn't flinch. She leans forward, her tone cold, scalpel sharp, every syllable slicing deeper than the last. You can command troops, she fires back, but you can't command inflation. The lie detonates instantly, the chamber erupting in a stunned roar. Journalists scramble to tweet. Hashtags ignite. Hashtag commander-in-chief of money. Hashtag Crockett strikes back. Networks cut into breaking coverage, looping the exchange, anxious whispering that it might be the soundbite of the year. Even those who came ready to dismiss her can't deny it. Jasmine has landed a blow that will echo far beyond the walls of the Capitol. Trump's face contorts, his lips curling into something between fury and disbelief. He points a finger at Jasmine as if to silence her, but the room doesn't bend this time. His allies fidget. Jordan leans back, Stefanik looks away, their confidence shaken by the sheer weight of the retort. For once, Trump's trademark bluster has met a force immovable, and the collision leaves him visibly rattled. The silence that follows isn't deference, it's disbelief. The camera finds Jasmine's expression calm, unflinching, her gaze fixed on Trump like a surgeon studying a wound. She doesn't smirk, doesn't gloat. She simply waits, letting the weight of her words do what rage cannot. The chamber feels it, the viewers at home feel it, the protesters outside feel it. Power itself has shifted, if only by an inch, but enough to make history tremble. And then the whispers start. In the press row, one reporter mutters, "That's the quote, that's the one that will bury him." In the gallery, a young intern clutches her phone, whispering, "Did we just watch him lose control?" On the street, chants change cadence, echoing the words Jasmine just delivered. You can't command inflation. The phrase spreads like wildfire, transformed into a rallying cry. Trump tries to recover, raising his voice again, but Nat rings hollow, his fury sounding more like desperation than dominance. He pounds the desk, shouts about witch hunts, but every word is drowned by the resonance of Jasmine's calm defiance. The contrast is too stark, to searing, his rage against her composure, his volume against her clarity. In that instant, the chamber becomes more than a hearing, it becomes a crucible. The question no longer belongs to the politicians circling like predators, it belongs to the millions watching, breath held, pulses racing, asking themselves, when truth is mocked so brazenly, can courage still pierce the nose, or will the nose consume us all? The chamber still buzzes with the aftershock of Jasmine's last strike when she leans forward again, her eyes narrowing, her tone dropping to a controlled whisper that cuts sharper than any shout. The room falls into an uneasy quiet, sensing something heavier about to land. She slides a folder across the table, the pages neatly tabbed, her finger pressing down on one marked in bold red. Then she lifts her gaze straight into Trump's, voice firm, deliberate, impossible to ignore. "Show us the statute that gives you power to fire a Federal Reserve governor for disagreeing with you." The words don't just challenge him, they corner him. Reporters snap their heads up, pens halting mid-stroke. Aides freeze, hands hovering above their laptops as though afraid to type until they see what happens next. The question hangs in the air like a guillotine suspended by a thread, and all that remains is to see if Trump can hold it or if the blade will fall. The gavel strikes once, not to restore order but to mark the gravity of the moment. The cameras obey the unspoken command of history. They zoom in, closer, closer still, until Trump's face fills the frame. The smirk that carried him into the room begins to stiffen, his jaw tightening, his eyes darting for the exit ramp that isn't there. His lips part, but no words follow. He shifts in his chair, the leather squeaking louder than the breath he draws. Viewers across the nation lean forward on their couches, hearts thudding in sync, knowing they are watching not just politics, but a test of power stripped bare. Jasmine does not relent. She repeats, slower, sharper, "Which law, Mr. Trump? Which line, which clause, which word in our Constitution allows you to play executioner with America's economy?" The tension snaps like electricity through the chamber. Protesters outside press harder against the barricades, their chants faint but furious. "Answer, answer." The room itself seems to lean toward him, demanding, daring him to produce what cannot be found. Trump's hand trembles slightly as he reaches for his notes, but the pages offer no rescue. He flips, stammers, mutters executive authority, that the words taste thin, brittle, hollow. Cameras catch the bead of sweat sliding down his temple, a man unmasked under the glare of truth spotlight. The silence lengthens into something unbearable, the weight of 40 million eyes pressing down on his shoulders. Jasmine leans back, not speaking another word, letting the silence grow until it roars louder than any insult he has thrown at her. In that pause, the hearing is no longer a hearing. It is an X-ray of power, a live autopsy of arrogance. The crowd doesn't move, doesn't breathe, waiting to see if he will claw his way out or crumble before them. And as the camera lingers on his face, unflinching, unmerciful, the question lingers with its searing, damning, inescapable. What happens when the man who claims absolute power is asked to prove it and finds only silence staring back? Trump's mouth opens, but nothing comes out. His lips shape words that never form, his throat catching on the weight of Jasmine's demand. The microphone in front of him picks up only the faint sound of breath, heavy and uneven, like a man choking on his own certainty. Cameras zoom closer, broadcasting every twitch, every bead of sweat, every flicker of panic in his eyes to millions of homes across America. For a man who made his empire on words, threats, insults, promises, the absence of speech is louder than any roar. Seconds pass, 10, 15. A cough from the gallery pierces the silence, only to be swallowed by the unbearable stillness that follows. Trump shifts in his chair, his hand jerking toward his notes, then pulling back, his mind hunting desperately for an escape hatch that does not exist. The leather creaks, the gavel hangs motionless in the speaker's hand, and the silence stretches further, strangling the chamber. At 25 seconds, the first ripple comes from outside. Protesters, their chants sharp and rhythmic, breaking through the stone walls. "Resign, resign." The sound grows louder, synchronized with the pounding of fists against barricades, each beat like a drum announcing the collapse of a throne. The cry is no longer a demand, it is a verdict. Reporters whip their cameras toward the windows as if the voices of the streets are part of the hearing itself. By 30 seconds, the silence inside has become unbearable. Lawmakers shift uneasily, allies avoid his gaze, Democrats watch with grim satisfaction. Jamie Raskin whispers to Jeffries, "He's crumbling." Stefanik glances down. Jordan wipes sweat from his brow, their loyalty cracking under the weight of 41 endless seconds. The man they defended now looks less like a warrior and more like a prisoner cornered by truth. At 41 seconds, the dam breaks. The gallery gasps in unison, as though realizing they have just witnessed a moment that will be replayed in history books. Phones buzz with alerts, networks flash banners. Trump silent for 41 seconds. Clips are cut and uploaded before he even exhales. Hashtags surging across social media. Hashtag for 1 second. Hashtag Trump frozen. Hashtag resign now. America doesn't just watch the silence, it weaponizes it, turning absence into accusation. Jasmine sits still, her face a portrait of unshakable calm, her silence deliberate, strategic, allowing the weight of the moment to devour him whole. She doesn't need to speak, the silence speaks for her. It screams louder than any argument, louder than any insult he could hurl. She lets it linger, lets the nation taste what it feels like when power collapses under its own arrogance. The hearing chamber no longer belongs to Trump, nor even to the lawmakers. It belongs to that silence, replaying endlessly in the minds of millions. And as the chants outside rise into a fever pitch, echoing through the walls of Congress, one thought pierces through the exhilaration and shock gripping the nation. If 41 seconds of silence can dismantle a man who once claimed absolute power, what else could fall when the truth is finally heard? The silence ends, but the shockwave it leaves behind tears through Washington like an earthquake. Journalists explode onto their phones, timelines igniting with headlines written in real time, the longest silence of Trump's career. Within seconds, the moment is clipped, captioned, and catapulted across social media, the number 41 already morphing into a symbol of collapse. Notifications flood devices coast to coast, people in subways, diners, classrooms all watching the same frozen expression of a man once untouchable. On television screens, the spectacle multiplies. MSNBC, CNN, and Fox all cut into split-screen coverage, the disbelief etched across the faces of seasoned commentators. On one side of the screen, Trump's silence plays on an endless loop, his lips moving but no sound emerging. On the other, stunned anchors struggle to describe the indescribable. Some whisper unprecedented, others call it the unraveling. Even on Fox, where defenses usually come fast and fierce, the pause is thick, their hosts groping for words that won't land. The nation, fractured for years, shares the same stunned gasp. Inside the chamber, the tension breaks not with another gavel, but with Jasmine Crockett's voice soft, precise, devastating. She leans into the microphone, her calm composure cutting sharper than any shout. You cannot fire the truth. The words land like a hammer against glass, shattering whatever illusion remained that this was merely another partisan skirmish. For the first time, the roles are reversed. Trump sits small, cornered, while Jasmine towers not in stature, but in authority, in clarity, in unyielding defiance. Gasps echo, some from the gallery, some from within the ranks of Trump's own allies. Elise Stefanik lowers her gaze. Jim Jordan shifts in his chair, jaw tight but speechless. The cameras catch every flicker of discomfort, the slow realization that defending him just became infinitely harder. Outside, the chants grow into a roar, resign, resign, vibrating through the walls as if the people themselves were pounding at the doors of power. Twitter explodes, hashtags trending in cascading waves. Hashtag for 1 second, hashtag Crockett truth, hashtag resign now. The moment transcends politics, it becomes culture, a phrase, a meme, a rallying cry. Clips of Jasmine's declaration flood TikTok, spliced with flashing subtitles and pounding music, already clocking millions of views before the hearing has even adjourned. Commentators compare her to historic voices of defiance, calling her words the 21st century's shot heard around the world. Trump tries to adjust his posture, muttering into the microphone, but the spell has already broken. Every movement seems smaller now, every attempt at control drowned by the echo of silence that exposed him. The chamber belongs to Jasmine, and America knows it. Her quiet sentence reverberates across the nation with more force than his loudest rally cry ever did. And as the networks replay the freeze alongside Jasmine's words, millions watching from living rooms and city squares are left breathless, whispering the question that no commentator dares say aloud, but every viewer feels burning in their chest. Did America just witness the undoing of a political empire? Live in 41 seconds of silence. Trump's face burns crimson, his composure finally cracking under the pressure of silence turned into spectacle. He slams his fist onto the table, rattling the microphones, and bellows with venom. You're trash, Crockett. The insult hangs in the chamber like a poisoned blade, raw and reckless, meant to humiliate, but instead exposing a man unraveling. The gallery gasps, some covering their mouths, others shaking their heads in disbelief. It isn't just an outburst, it's desperation, stripped to polish, broadcast live to a nation already doubting his strength. Before the shockwave settles, Elise Stefanik leaps to her feet, her voice shrill against the echoing chamber. This is a witch hunt. She points toward Jasmine, as if trying to transfer the rage bowling out of Trump into something resembling order. But her defense is brittle, transparent, a script recited too many times before. The words fail to land. They ricochet back, leaving only the impression of panic, of loyalists clinging to sinking ground. Even Jim Jordan pounds the table, his fists heavy, his voice cracked from shouting, but the fury only magnifies the scene's chaos instead of controlling it. The audience, both in the chamber and across the nation, recoils. Mothers watching at home tighten their arms around their children, disgust flooding their faces. Retirees shake their heads at televisions, murmuring, "This isn't leadership, it's a tantrum." Protesters outside seize the moment, chants growing sharper, angrier, the rhythm of resign, pounding like war drums through the marble walls. What was once political theater now feels like a courtroom of morality, the verdict forming not in documents, but in the hearts of millions. Jasmine does not rise, does not shout back. She sits perfectly still, the embodiment of composure, her silence slicing deeper than any insult. Her calm against his rage paints a contrast so stark that every camera in the chamber frames it like art. The red-faced man consumed by fury against the posed woman refusing to flinch. The visual itself becomes a message, one stronger than words. Rage collapsing under dignity. Reporters scramble to send alerts. Trump erupts in hearing. Insults Crockett on live TV. Social media ignites. Clips of the moment spliced and shared. Captions screaming, "Trash" or "Truth." The backlash is immediate, furious, unstoppable. Even commentators who once defended him hesitate, their faces betraying the unease of watching a leader shed the last veneer of control. The chamber feels heavier with every breath, the gavel pounding but drowned out by the storm. This isn't just a clash of personalities anymore, it's a raw battle for the soul of power, for who gets to define strength in America. And as Trump's insult echoes into infamy, one truth crystallizes in the minds of those watching. When a leader descends to spitting venom, has he already admitted defeat? The chamber is still vibrating from Trump's eruption when Jasmine finally rises. She does not shout, she does not sneer, her calm is the sharpest weapon in the room. She adjusts the microphone, her voice steady, every syllable carrying the weight of a gavel. "Mr. Trump, you call me trash? Let's talk about records, yours, not mine." The room tilts toward her, cameras tightening their focus, the tension thick enough to choke. She raises her hand, and a screen behind her flickers to life. Numbers blaze across it in bold, unforgiving red. 34 indictments, the digits loom like iron bars on a prison door. Gasps ripple through the gallery, aides shifting in their seats as if the air itself has grown heavier. She doesn't pause, doesn't let the audience recover. 62 courtroom defeats, another number slams onto the screen, stacking. Humiliation atop humiliation. Reporters pound their keyboards, tweets flying out faster than the gavel can pound for order. The split-screen feeds flash the figures again and again, knowing millions of Americans are memorizing them as if they were scars carved into stone. Jasmine steps closer to the mic, her tone tightening, the pace deliberate, as if each word were a nail driven into a coffin. $787 million illegal penalties. The number reverberates like an explosion, the chamber echoing with gasps and whispers. Outside, the protesters seize on it instantly, chanting the figure like a battle cry. Their voices filter into the chamber's stone walls, each syllable pulsing like a heartbeat synchronized with her words. The impact is not just political, it is visceral. She lets the silence breathe for a moment, her eyes never leaving Trump's. "That is not leadership," she continues, her voice low but razor sharp. "That is a resume of failure. That is the cost of corruption measured in indictments, defeats, and dollars drained from the American people's trust." Her words aren't just an attack, they are an indictment read aloud in front of the nation, each number a charge the viewers at home can feel in their bones. Trump squirms in his chair, his jaw tight, his face a mask of rage barely concealing the panic beneath. He raises a hand as if to interrupt, but Jasmine cuts him off without raising her volume. "So when you call me trash, remember this. I stand here with no indictments, no courtroom losses, no penalties to my name. The only thing I carry is the Constitution, and the only thing you carry is the weight of your own disgrace." The gallery erupts, half with applause, half with gasps. The moment too heavy to sit still, the cameras drink it in, the numbers flashing. Behind her, Trump sinking under their glare, Jasmine unbroken at the center of the storm. It is no longer a hearing, it is a reckoning. And as the chants outside grow louder, one thought burns into the conscience of the nation. When the shield of truth is made of facts and failures, can even the loudest lies break through it? Outside the Capitol, the storm that had been building all morning finally breaks. The barricades rattle as waves of protesters surge forward, their chants pounding like war drums. Protect the Fed, protect democracy. Signs thrust into the air catch the sun, slogans painted in black and red, some shaking so violently that the paint itself seems alive. The sheer sound is deafening, a human roar that ricochets off the marble columns and slices through the air like lightning. But their cries are not alone. On the other side of the plaza, counter-protesters rise, red caps and clenched fists, their voices colliding in furious defiance. Stand with Trump. Drain the swamp. Two tides crash against each other, banners slamming like weapons, chants, drowning chants, the air charged with a violence that feels seconds away from ignition. Police lines hold, shields braced, eyes darting nervously as the chants mutate into shoves, shoves into fists, fists into chaos. A smoke bomb cracks open, the air filling with haze, sirens screaming closer, the crowd convulsing between rage and fear. Helicopters circle overhead, cameras zooming in, beaming the street battle into living rooms across America. Anchors gasp live on air as images fill the screen. Teenagers with megaphones screaming our future is not for sale, clashing with older men waving flags, both sides locked in a tug-of-war for the narrative of the nation. A protester collapses after being pepper-sprayed, another is dragged out bleeding from the forehead, the camera catching it all in raw, unflinching detail. The hearing inside is no longer just a hearing, it is the eye of a storm tearing the country in two. Inside the chamber, the nose bleeds through the thick walls, a distant roar that grows louder, sharper, impossible to ignore. Security stiffens, radios buzzing with urgent updates, hands hovering near earpieces and sidearms. One guard whispers to another, "If the barricade breaks, we won't hold them." The lawmakers glance nervously at the doors, some whispering prayers under their breath, others checking their phones as news alerts confirm what they already hear. America is splitting outside these walls, and the world is watching every crack. The cameras inside pawn from Trump's flushed face to Jasmine's unflinching posture, catching both in the same frame, the symbol of power unraveling against the shield of composure. The crowd outside chants, louder, synchronized now, a booming cry that vibrates through the chamber's very floor. Protect the Fed, protect democracy. Their voices shake the microphones, rattle the glass, turning the Capitol into a drum of national reckoning. Jasmine lifts her eyes to the ceiling, listening to the chants bleed through the marble like ghosts, demanding justice. Trump shifts uneasily, knowing those voices are not just noise, they are judgment. The chamber is suffocating, history closing in on all sides. And as the protests outside escalate into chaos, the lawmakers inside realize they are standing at the edge of something bigger than any hearing. The question crashes over the room with the force of the crowd outside. When chaos reigns in the streets, can order survive within the walls of power, or will both collapse together? The roar from outside still rattles the chamber when Jasmine stands once more, this time with a remote control grip firmly in her hand. She doesn't look at Trump, not yet. Instead, she raises her voice just enough to pierce the fevered air. For anyone still unsure of the stakes, she says, let's allow the former president to speak for himself. She presses the button, and the screen behind her flickers to life, its glow washing over the faces of lawmakers, reporters, and millions watching at home. The footage is raw, unedited, unmistakable. Trump sits in a gilded chair during a rally interview, leaning forward with his trademark swagger. His voice, amplified now in the solemn chamber, rings with chilling certainty. I can fire Lisa Cook. Presidents should have total control. If they don't follow orders, they're gone. The words hang in the room like a gunshot. Gasps ripple across the gallery, audible even through the thick silence that follows. Reporters type furiously, knowing they've just witnessed the soundbite that will define the hearing, maybe even the decade. Jasmine lets the clip play again, then again, each repetition more damning than the last. Trump shifts in his seat, his hands gripping the table, his face tightening with each replay, as though every echo of his own voice carves deeper into the perception of absolute arrogance. The camera pans to his profile, capturing the sweat on his brow, the tension in his jaw, the sudden absence of his earlier swagger. The man who boasted of firing authority is now trapped in his own confession, broadcast live on screens across America. Then the video cuts to a panel of constitutional lawyers, their voices calm, clinical, devastating. One declares, "No president has the authority to fire a sitting Federal Reserve governor. Debt protection is enshrined in law. Attempting to do so is not leadership, it is a violation of constitutional principle." Another adds, "This isn't about policy disagreements, it's about preventing any president from turning the central bank into a political tool." Their words slice through the chamber like scalpels, each syllable a wound. The crowd inside gasps again, louder this time. The gallery erupts with murmurs, some stunned, some furious. Protesters outside seize on the moment as the lawyers' words play on live feeds. Their chants redouble, the cry of "Protect democracy," rolling like thunder through the streets. Jasmine doesn't need to speak, the footage speaks louder than any cross-examination ever could. Finally, she turns toward Trump, her expression calm but unyielding. "That's not my interpretation," she says, her tone steady as steel. "That is your voice, your words, your own undoing. And it is the law itself that answers you." The cameras catch every angle, the woman standing firm, the man cornered by his own confession, the chamber gasping under the weight of undeniable proof. The silence that follows is electric, charged with shock, fury, exhilaration. And as millions lean closer to their screens, one question lingers in the air like smoke after an explosion. If the law can catch a man who thought himself untouchable, what else might crumble when truth is finally put on trial? The screen behind Jasmine fades to black, the lawyer's words still echoing in the stunned chamber when she steps forward again. She doesn't raise her voice, doesn't strike the table, she lowers it, sharpening it into a blade. Her eyes lock on Trump's, unblinking, impenetrable. "If you can fire one governor today," she asked slowly, each word falling like a hammer on stone, "who will you fire tomorrow?" The sentence lands with surgical precision, slicing past rhetoric and burying itself in the marrow of the question every American has been too afraid to ask. Trump's lips twitch. He shifts in his chair, hands gripping the table as though trying to anchor himself. The cameras close in, catching the flicker of panic, the shallow breath, the twitch of his jaw. The silence begins again, first a second, then 2, then 5. Reporters lean forward, their pens hovering in midair. The gallery goes still, the protesters' chants outside pressing harder against the marble walls as though they sense the weight of this moment. 10 seconds pass. His face hardens, but still no words come. 15 seconds. The chamber is suffocating now, every eye drilling into him, every lens capturing his unraveling. Elise Stefanik fidgets in her chair, biting her lip, her gaze darting nervously toward the exits. Jim Jordan whispers something under his breath, but the words evaporate into the thick air. Trump's silence has become the headline before it even ends. At 25 seconds, the first audible gasp comes from the gallery. A man mutters, he has no answer. The microphones tick it up faintly, the nation hearing what the room already knows. Protesters outside seize the energy, their chants morphing into a deafening chorus. "Resign. Resign. Resign." The sound vibrates through the chamber floor, amplifying the paralysis on display. America is no longer just watching him, it is judging him. By 30 seconds, the silence has mutated into humiliation. His eyes dart toward his notes, but his hand doesn't move. His mouth opens once, then shuts, the words collapsing before they're born. The man who branded himself as fearless now looks cornered, stripped of his armor, reduced to a figure choking on the weight of his own bravado. At 37 seconds, the silence breaks not by his voice, but by the collective gasp of the room as the stopwatch on the broadcast hits its mark. Networks splash banners across the screen. Trump silent. 37 seconds. Clicks surge across Twitter and TikTok instantly. Hashtags igniting. Hashtag second silence. Hashtag Trump cornered. Hashtag Crockett truth. To freeze becomes a weapon, shared millions of times before Trump even exhales. Jasmine doesn't gloat, doesn't move. She simply leans back, her expression calm, her silence deliberate, her question still hanging an answer in the air. The chamber feels it, the audience feels it, the nation feels it. The second silence is more damning than the first, and as the chants outside grow into a deafening roar, one thought sears itself into history. If a leader cannot answer the simplest question of power, can he still claim the right to wield it at all? The moment Trump's 37 seconds of silence ends, the chamber erupts into a storm of news reporters scrambling, cameras flashing, aides whispering in panic, but the real explosion happens outside the room. Within minutes, Hashtag 37seconds rockets to the top of Twitter, trending not just in Washington or New York but worldwide. Clips of Trump's frozen face loop endlessly, spliced into memes, overlaid with ticking clocks, the numbers 3, 7, flashing like a countdown to collapse. On TikTok, teenagers remix the footage into music beats. On Instagram, activists frame it with the caption, "When silence says everything." Major outlets don't hesitate. MSNBC rolls out the Chiron, the Crockett freeze. CNN runs it side by side with Nixon's resignation speech. Anchors whispering about history, repeating. Even Fox, usually Trump's shield, hesitates, their panelists fidgeting with forced smiles as they search for a defense that won't come. The image of a once defiant man, silent and cornered, is too powerful to spin. The silence has become a brand, a weapon, a scarlet mark on his record. Inside the chamber, Jasmine absorbs the chaos with a calm that contrasts violently against Trump's red-faced rage. She tilts her head toward the camera, her voice steady, unshaken, almost serene. "America," she says, each syllable deliberate, "this is your democracy fighting back." The words resonate like a pledge, slicing through the nose of the chamber and embedding themselves into the hearts of millions watching at home. Social feeds ignite again, clips of her declaration spreading like wildfire. The Crockett Doctrine, some call it, a moment where truth stood up and power crumbled. Trump slams his fist against the desk, trying to reclaim momentum, but his fury only fuels a narrative of a man unraveling. Every shout, every insult is drowned out by the unstoppable circulation of those 37 seconds. Commentators speak of it as if it were a verdict. The silence was louder than any denial he could have given. One writes, another declares, that was the moment his empire cracked. The public isn't just consuming the story. They are writing it in real time. Each post, each share, each chant outside adding another nail to the coffin of his control. Outside, the chants synchronize with the hashtag 37 seconds, resign, resign. Protesters hold up stopwatches, digital timers glowing in the twilight. The crowd grows louder, bigger, their voices fusing with the digital roar of millions online. It feels less like a protest and more like a verdict already delivered. History announcing itself in shouts and screens. Jasmine doesn't move, doesn't gloat. She simply lets the storm swirl around her, her calm composure becoming the eye of it all. Every lens focuses on her. Every network frames her as the fulcrum between chaos and clarity. Trump's silence gave her the stage, her words give her the crown, and as the frenzy builds to a fever pitch, one question pierces through the nose, unspoken yet unavoidable, burning in the minds of millions. How far will Trump go when silence fails him, and what destruction will he unleash to reclaim what he just lost? Trump finally snaps, his voice booms through the chamber, a guttural roar that rattles the microphones. "When I'm back in power, Crockett, you're gone." The words crash like a thunderclap, heavy with threat, dripping with vengeance. For a moment the chamber holds its breath, the temperature of the room plunging as every soul feels the weight of what has just been said. It isn't bluster anymore, it's a promise of retribution. Security reacts instantly. Agents along the wall shift forward, hands brushing their earpieces, eyes locked on Trump as if waiting for the next line to turn into action. The tension is physical, a wire pulled so tight it could snap with the slightest tremor. A low murmur rises from the gallery, fear mixing with outrage, the kind of sound that comes when a crowd realizes the line between politics and menace has just been crossed. Jasmine doesn't flinch. Her spine remains straight, her gaze unshaken, though the threat carries enough venom to make the marble walls sweat. She inhales once, slow and deliberate, letting the silence after his words stretch long enough for the entire country to feel the danger in them, and then, with steady calm, she leans toward her microphone. Her voice isn't raised, but it cuts sharper than his roar. "You can threaten me, Mr. Trump, you can try to frighten me, but what you cannot do is erase the people who sent me here. Their power does not leave with your tantrums." The crowd inside shifts, a swell of murmurs and gasps, the balance of fear tilting toward defiance. Protesters outside hear of his threat through live streams and chants rise louder, angrier, echoing into the chamber walls. "Protect the truth. Protect the truth." The chants blend with the heavy silence inside, the air vibrating with the tension of two Americas colliding in real time. Trump glares across the table, his face flushed, his hand gripping the edge as though he could break it off with sheer fury. Jasmine holds her ground, her stillness ablaze against his storm. The cameras capture every frame, her composure against his eruption, the image already destined to define the confrontation, and as the nation watches, fear intertwines with resolve, dread with determination, leaving one question burning hotter than the threat itself. If this is how he wields rage without power, what will he unleash if power is ever returned to his hands? The chamber is still shaking from Trump's threat when Jasmine rises, her movements slow, deliberate, commanding the room without a single word. She places both palms on the table, leans into the microphone, and lets her voice strike with the certainty of a gavel. You can't evict me from democracy. I was elected to defend it, and defend it I will. The declaration reverberates through the marble walls, slicing through the tension like lightning splitting a storm. For a heartbeat, silence grips the chamber, then the eruption comes. Applause bursts from the gallery, fierce and unrestrained, echoing like cannon fire across the hall. Some stand to their feet, clapping until their palms sting, their cheers colliding with the chants of protesters outside. The sound fuses into a single roar that vibrates through the floor and makes the microphones tremble. Even the cameras shake as journalists struggle to hold their shot steady, their faces lit with the force of the moment they are witnessing. Trump sits rigid, his face twisted, but the spotlight has abandoned him. All eyes are on Jasmine. Now, the chamber transformed into a stage where she is no longer just a representative, she is the embodiment of defiance. She lifts her chin, eyes sweeping across the room, pausing briefly on the lawmakers who moments ago echoed his rage. None meet her gaze. In that silence, her authority expands, filling every corner of the room, drowning out even the possibility of rebuttal. The networks cut to split screens, Trump scowling, Jasmine blazing. Commentators whisper into their microphones, "This is the clip America will replay for decades." Hashtags ignite instantly, hashtag defend democracy, hashtag Crockett will not fall. Within minutes, the soundbite ricochets through phones and laptops, her words flashing across timelines in bold captions, her defiance seared into the conscience of the nation. Jasmine doesn't smile, doesn't bask in the ovation, she simply raises her hand, steadying the chamber with a gesture, her eyes burning with a clarity that pierces the lens and reaches into the living rooms of millions. Her voice lowers, but the force behind it doubles. If you think fear will move me, you do not understand the people who gave me this seat. They cannot be silenced, and neither can I. The chamber quakes with another wave of applause, this one sharper, louder, more relentless than the first. And as the roar carries her words beyond the walls, the question that grips the nation sharpens into a blade. If one woman's vow can turn a threat into thunderous defiance, what storm will she unleash when the fight for democracy reaches its breaking point? The thunder of applause still echoes when the chamber shifts in a way no one expected. Jasmine is no longer standing alone. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez rises from her seat, her voice sharp as steel. She speaks for all of us. Democracy is not yours to auction off. Jamie Raskin follows, holding a pocket constitution high above his head like a weapon of law. This document is stronger than any threat you make, Mr. Trump, he declares, his words reverberating like a verdict. Hakeem Jeffries steps forward, steady and deliberate, his presence sealing the moment. We stand with Crockett. We stand with democracy. The chamber erupts again, this time not with chaos, but with clarity. A wall has formed, visible and undeniable, Jasmine at its center, her allies locking into place like shields at her side. Outside, the protesters seize on the momentum, their chants swelling louder, angrier, unstoppable. The rhythmic cry of "Protect the Fed, protect democracy" becomes a battle hymn, pounding against the Capitol's stone walls until it feels like the entire building shakes. Helicopter cameras capture the swelling crowd, the split screen showing the storm outside mirroring the fire inside. Sirens wail. In the distance, barricades rattle. The country teeters on the knife's edge between protest and uprising. And in the middle of it all sits Trump, the man who once commanded arenas with a flick of his wrist, but now the spotlight betrays him. His shoulders sag, his tie hangs loose, and sweat drips steadily down his temple. The camera zooms close, catching the tremor in his jaw, the twitch of his fingers clawing at the table's edge. For the first time, the man who built an empire on dominance looks cornered, trapped in a cage of his own making. Reporters whisper furiously into phones, Anka's on left feet struggle to keep pace with the speed of history unfolding. Some describe it as a reversal of gravity, others as the moment the tide turned. Millions watching at home sense it too, that a chapter is closing, and another, darker one may be about to explode. Jasmine does not gloat, she simply stands, flanked by allies, her silence now louder than Trump's rage. The cameras frame it perfectly, one man cornered, a movement rising behind the woman he tried to break. And the question that hangs over the chamber, over the crowds, over the nation itself, is one that crackles with dread and inevitability. When a leader is cornered, will he retreat or will he self-destruct, dragging everything with him? The chamber hums with a fevered energy, the weight of history pressing down on every shoulder. Jasmine rises one final time, her presence filling the room like a storm-gathering force. She doesn't need notes, she doesn't need theatrics. The silence before her words is its own drumroll. Her gaze locks on Trump, steady and unyielding, and when she speaks, the sentence lands like a hammer cracking granite. Mr. Trump, you tried to fire the Fed, now America has fired your credibility. The words ricochet through the chamber, striking every corner, every camera, every heart watching at home. For a moment the air seems to hold its breath, suspended between disbelief and thunder. Then the explosion comes, not of chaos this time, but of clarity. Gasps from the gallery, the roar of protesters outside sensing into a deafening cheer, journalists scrambling to blast the quote across every screen. Within seconds, banners flash on the networks, Crockett's final blow, social media detonates, hashtag storming the digital sky, hashtag fired credibility, hashtag Crockett victory, hashtag truth prevails. Trump freezes, his jaw clenching, his fists tightening against the table, but his bluster is gone. The cameras zoom close, capturing the moment not of dominance, but of defeat. A man stripped bare by words, to shark, to dodge, to public, to bury. His face flushes deep crimson, his lips press into a thin line, and then, without a word, he shoves back his chair. The screech of metal against marble is louder than the gavel. He stands abruptly, almost stumbling, his frame rigid with rage, and storms toward the chamber doors. Security stirs, reporters leap from their seats, the chamber alive with the shock of motion. Cameras chase him in a frenzy, lenses flashing, microphones thrust forward as he pushes through aides and bodyguards. The once commanding figure is now reduced to retreat, his back to the nation as his footsteps echo down the corridor. Outside, the chants shift instantly, a wave of catharsis crashing through the barricades. Resign, resign, resign. Their rhythm shakes the air like thunder, the sound following him like a shadow he cannot escape. Inside, Jasmine remains standing, her figure steady, her expression calm but fierce. She doesn't celebrate, doesn't move, she lets the moment speak for itself. Around her, allies rise in silent solidarity, the chamber now hers in every sense. The networks replay the scene on loop, her final words, his retreat, the eruption of a crowd finding its voice again. And as the dust settles, one truth becomes undeniable. In the battle between arrogance and principle, only one walked out undefeated, and it was not the man who once claimed he could fire the truth. The image of Trump storming out is still burning across every screen when the headlines strike like lightning. Crockett crushed Trump. 41 seconds plus 37 seconds equals a president exposed. Newsrooms work in overdrive, their tickers glowing red as anchors replay the exchange on loop. On MSNBC, the Chiron reads, "The final blow." CNN calls it the day credibility die. Even international outlets from London to Tokyo beam the footage with urgency, their commentators marveling at how a single hearing became a global reckoning. Leaders across the world weigh in. The Prime Minister of Canada issues a statement. Independent institutions must be protected today. America reaffirmed that. The President of France calls it a powerful reminder that no democracy should bow to the will of one man. From Brussels, the European Central Bank issues a rare comment. The independence of the Federal Reserve is a cornerstone of global stability. Every word only sharpens the sense that Jasmine's stand was not just domestic theater, it was a defense of the democratic order itself. Outside the Capitol, the roar of protests that had once been laced with anger transforms into catharsis. Flags wave, confetti cannons burst into the air. Chants of "Protect Democracy" roll like a victory march across the plaza. Strangers hug each other, tears streaking down faces weathered by hours in the sun. A veteran in uniform lifts his fist, declaring to the cameras, "Today, The people won. The barricades no longer feel like cages, but like the edges of a stage, with the crowd singing their triumph to the world. Inside homes across America, the reaction is no less visceral. In diners, people rise from their seats to clap at televisions. On factory floors, workers huddle around small screens, nodding in solidarity. On campuses, students cheer and live-stream their reactions, their feeds exploding with pride. Families watch together in silence, then smile in relief, realizing they've just witnessed history not of defeat, but of defiance victorious. And through it all, Jasmine's words replay again and again. You can't evict me from democracy. They are etched into the moment, reverberating beyond partisanship, transforming into something larger than politics. The air is heavy not with dread, but with pride. Yet even as relief settles, like a calm after a storm, one question lingers, sharp and haunting, daring the nation to look past celebration into the battles still ahead. If one victory has lit the fire of hope, how fiercely must America fight to keep it burning? Jasmine steps out of the Capitol into a sea of voices that no longer sound like chaos, but like triumph. Protesters, who had chanted in fury, now stretch out their hands in gratitude, their eyes met with relief. A construction worker in a hard hat grips her palm, whispering, "You fought for us." A grandmother pulls her close, pressing a photo of her late husband, a union man, into Jasmine's hand as if to say his struggle lives on through hers. The cameras capture it all, the line between politician and people vanishing in a rush of human connection. She pauses on the Capitol steps, the roar of the crowd rising behind her, and delivers the words that will be etched into history. No president should be above the law, no community should be below its protection. Her voice trembles, not with fear but with conviction, carrying across the plaza, across television screens, across the fractured heart of a nation desperate for reassurance. It is not just a statement, it is a promise, binding and unflinching. For a moment, time seems to slow. Protesters wave flags, journalists raise their microphones, families at home lean closer to their televisions, and the sense is universal. This is not just politics, it is the reaffirmation of a country's soul. Jasmine turns once more toward the cameras, her eyes sharp and unyielding, and asks, "If silence could expose corruption, what could your voice do today?" The question pierces through the noise, leaving millions to sit with it, to wrestle with it, to answer it in their own lights. The screen fades to black, but not before the call to action blazes across. Comment, share, speak, because democracy only survives when you do. The story may end here, but the fight it ignites is only beginning. In the end, Jasmine's stand was not only about law or politics, it was about the courage to face intimidation with clarity and conviction. Her defiance reminds us that true strength is not measured in volume or power, but in the ability to uphold principles when they are most threatened. In life, we all face moments where silence or fear could make us step back, but if one voice can challenge arrogance on the national stage, then your voice can challenge injustice in your daily world. So, here is the question for you. When the moment comes, will you stay silent or will you speak? Thank you for watching until this moment and for standing with us on this journey for justice. Your support means everything. Like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss what's next. And we'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment below and let us know what moved you most in this story. Together, our voices make a difference.